To some extent, historically, people from poor backgrounds have had an opportunity where they couldn't afford to go to school, they could actually learn important skills on the job. So I think that continues to be an opportunity for them. I think for older workers, there's a particular issue because it just doesn't make sense often for the 55-year-old worker to invest heavily in new skills. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is, I think, perhaps some wage reductions, or at least wages that are not growing as fast for older workers these days, and perhaps some lower participation in the labor force.
However, with work life being extended, maybe it would make sense for somebody at 50 or 55 to learn new skills if they're not going to get a pension before they're 70.
Of course, that's true. I think that is right. The difficulty is for everybody, and perhaps it's more acute for the elderly or the less educated, is how do we teach these new skills? The schools have difficulty finding teachers who can deal with new technology skills. Much of the skills have to be learned on the job, and that's often difficult. Not everybody learns well on the job.
Mm-hmm. Which brings us to the policies. And you said that the policies might not be able to address the skills gap. Why is that, and how can that be remedied?
Well, I think policies can make a difference. I think we need to be careful that we don't oversell the policies and argue that they can solve the problem, because I think as long as technology is changing very rapidly in some fields, it's going to be difficult. Skills may be learned and then may become obsolete very quickly. We see that going on in some occupations, not all occupations. We find that schools may have difficulty finding teachers. If there are very few people who have the skills, they may much prefer to make good money in the workplace rather than teaching others. So all of those things present problems for teaching new skills or having a workforce that can acquire those new skills. And in some occupations, that's going to persist for a period of time. So one thing that history tells us is these problems can actually take decades to resolve.
Based on examples from history where occupations that became obsolete were replaced by new ones and absorbed a workforce that developed new skills, what kind of skills do you see young people of today needing for tomorrow?
I think that's very hard to say. And I don't have a lot of research to guide anything I do say. But I think that, well, clearly familiarity with computers and the information technology is helpful. But in fact, I think a lot of the important skills are going to be interpersonal skills, social skills, and there is some other people have research suggesting that is the trend.
You've also said that ownership of knowledge is the biggest challenge to capitalism. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Well, that was in response to Richard Freeman's talk. So we tend to think about ownership being of machines, of physical capital. And increasingly, physical capital is becoming less and less expensive and less critical to production. So there's a challenge in terms of how do we provide the right incentives for all parties to develop new knowledge and to share new knowledge so that it's used most effectively in society. And I think we can look at a whole bunch of policy areas, from patents, trade secrets, employment law. In all of these areas, there's various contests going on and the law and policies are changing because we have divergent interests. So this, I think, is a major challenge.
Are you optimistic that, let's say in 20 or 30 years from now, we'll be well equipped to deal with the challenges that lie ahead?
I have no idea. We just don't know what the course of technology is going to be, and I'm very reluctant to make predictions. Some people see an acceleration in technological change, and that could make things progressively worse and more difficult. On the other hand, we are seeing some areas and some occupations, where, particularly healthcare, for instance, where new technologies have been absorbed and stabilized in a way that we have training systems that work well, and we're seeing both employment growth and rising wages.
And it's beneficial also.
It's beneficial to society, yeah.